So, Senator Marco Rubio has been tapped to deliver the Republican response to President Obama's State of the Union address. It's an important assignment, to be sure, and a great opportunity, but not a charge that most people would envy. Now, Rubio's not likely to garner a huge audience who will watch his speech live, but a lot of people will see or at least hear about his speech in the news and on the internet in the coming days. So he's got to do something that really grabs people's attention, something the media won't ignore. I recommend breaking out some carefully selected charts and graphs that will really emphasize the points you're trying to get across and also provide evidence to support whatever claims you want to make in his speech. Since a large portion of Senator Rubio's speech is likely to be devoted to economic issues, there are some graphs that I think he really ought to consider using. Take a look at this one. This is from Investors Business Daily, and as you can see, the green line shows how much revenue the government has taken in each of the last 15 fiscal years. The blue line is how much it's spent in each fiscal year, and the red line shows how much the government would have spent had we increased spending levels from the 1998 budget, which was the first budget surplus in nearly 30 years, just at the rate of inflation and also accounting for the increase in the population, because there are programs like Medicare and Social Security that we have to spend more on each year because there are more people collecting benefits. Somebody should obviously blow this up so that Rubio can hold it up for all to see when he's giving the address. Now notice that if you draw a line from 2009, Obama's first year in office, then you'll notice that government spending hasn't actually increased that much since Obama's first year as president. But the problem is it shot up during the Bush administration's last year in office and also the first year of Obama's presidency. And so we've now got spending at this ridiculously high level that is not only unsustainable, but there's no justification for it. And so what Senator Rubio ought to say is something along the lines of, now, President Obama would like you to think, look, spending hasn't gone up that much since I've been president. But the problem is, it's at this artificially inflated level. He's not talking about raising spending a little bit from a responsible level or even a slightly above responsible level. He's talking about keeping spending at this artificially inflated level that is unjustifiable and unsustainable. And to really drive the point home, because a lot of people aren't very bright, Rubio ought to just make it as simple as possible and say, here's our position, meaning the Republicans' position. This is responsible. This is not only irresponsible, but ridiculous. So whenever you hear the president or any politician talk about spending cuts in the context of cutting education spending, cutting programs for the poor, cutting science and technology and research and development, cutting investment, cutting programs that provide opportunity for people, remember, they're not talking about cutting spending on education and other programs that we all like down from this level. They're talking about cutting it from this ridiculously high level of spending. And then, to counter whatever argument the president will make about taxes, because he always talks about a balanced approach, more taxes, some spending cuts, Rubio ought to break out this chart. I know I've seen Speaker Boehner with this chart on the House floor. He ought to point out, look, the president has already signed into law trillions of dollars worth of tax increases. And yet, even with all the tax increases President Obama has already signed into law, we are not even going to come close to closing the budget gap between the tax revenue we're going to take in and the spending levels that President Obama wants to keep us at. Also, Rubio should say, don't buy the argument that spending cuts, even massive spending cuts, will hurt our economy. Because, look, our economy was booming. We were prospering when spending was at this level, when the government was spending much, much less than it is now. And yet, we're doing worse now, even with spending at this huge, astronomical level. So, that's another thing. By the way, if you want to read more about how spending cuts won't hurt the economy, then there's an article on my blog, 5 Left-Wing Myths About the Economy. One of the myths is that spending cuts will have a devastating impact on the economy. Rubio also should mention how the Republicans in the House, the only part of the Congress that they control, have taken action to try and boost the economy, bring spending down to responsible levels, and also replace the cuts that will automatically take effect under the sequester, the defense cuts, with more sensible cuts. Because I know a lot of people are opposed to the sequester. Here's one way he could put it. Congressional Republicans have offered policy solutions to create jobs, save and strengthen Social Security and Medicare, and reduce federal spending in a responsible way that won't hurt our economy. And you have ignored them, attacked them, criticized them, but you haven't offered any serious alternatives to them. To this day, you have not shown the American people a specific plan to balance the budget. You've attacked our plan, but you haven't countered it with anything equally specific or realistic. Mr. President, you've known for years that we're willing to strike a deal to address these critical issues, but to do that, you've got to bring something to the table. Also mention all of the bills which have passed the House, but that the Senate hasn't acted on. Jobs bills, bills to replace the sequester with responsible cuts. Really, the House is doing its job, and the Senate's not. So tell people the House has addressed these problems. We're waiting for the Senate to act. Call Senator Reid's office tomorrow and ask why the senator hasn't brought any of these bills up for a vote. If Democrats are so convinced that their policies are right, that they have the right ideas, and that the public is with them, then why are they afraid to bring these bills up for a simple vote? Well, that's about all for now. I had some other ideas, but those are the main points. Anywho, take care. Thanks for watching the video. And, oh, check out that blog I mentioned. Subscribe if you like what you see. And follow me on Twitter, @RightWingGenius. Again, thanks for watching. And as always, don't mess with the right-wing genius.